Okay, bear with me. This is my first YouTube video. Super excited. We're going to be talking about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. Um, we read the first chapter in class night, and that's the one where the handmaids are in the gymnasium, kind of being prepped for the world. Almost seems like they're prisoners or they're in a boot camp of something. So I wanted to take a look at the first big section called shopping. And the chapter's shopping, but within the chapter there are multiple little chapters. It's our first look at the world of Gilead. So I'll be glancing down sometimes. I wrote down some notes as we go through it. So, anyways, um, our introduction to the room that Offred's going to be staying in. I think the most telling thing would be the last sentence of that first paragraph on page 7. They've removed anything you could tie a rope to. Essentially, you have a society that has suicide-proofed the rooms. That should tell you a little something about the world, and it should tell you something about um, what we're getting into. You don't suicide-proof a room unless you think people are going to be suicidal or going to be unhappy in there as well. In the first couple pages, I was wondering why all the descriptions. Why does every concrete object in the room have to be focused on so much? A chair, a lamp, a table, a picture, all those kind of things. So something I'm thinking about why she's focusing on those concrete objects, and as she's going through, taking a look, a bed, single, mattress, medium hard, um, very choppy, perhaps. I'm not sure what the author. Maybe you guys have some ideas what the author's trying to do. But at the end of that, we has where I am is not a prison, but a privilege, as Aunt Lydia said. We realize that it probably is a prison. Aunt Lydia is a liar, and Aunt Lydia, who is in love with the either or. The either or is one of those logical fallacies. Either this or that, and we know that anything worth debating is probably got a lot of different answers. There's no either or. Either you eat your vegetables at night or you're going to grow up to be unhealthy. Either you stop using plastic straws or all the turtles are going to die. Obviously, things are a lot more complex than that. So the either or logical fallacy that's brought about. We get the outfit that's described. And here we have Offred dressed in like a nun's habit, but red instead of the traditional black. And it seems like she's got they're called. It's actually called a coronet. It's like if you ever seen like a movie Sally Fields, The Flying Nun. They kind of this headpiece that's white that I guess would probably prevent peripheral vision since it would be hanging down so that you're only tunnel focused on what's ahead. But we start to get colors. I'm not going to say that colors are necessarily a symbol in this book. I think the colors, in some cases, are purposeful, but it's not like The Great Gatsby where color symbolism is going to be something that we focus on. Um, Offred is, like the other handmaids, dressed in red, and then she says on page 9, a sister dipped in blood. We could have thought that the red was, passion, anger, all those kind of things that red usually represents, but it's most likely blood, as in menstrual blood, as in, um, you know. We get the Marthas, and their outfit is in green, and we're going to learn that the ants wear brown, and the commanders wear blue, and beyond just the idea that a color is going to represent your role in the society or an outfit. I'm not going to put too much emphasis in that. Like, imagine if we all had uniforms that we had to wear to represent, like you had student uniforms that you had to wear all the time representing your students. Or I would have a teacher uniform, something probably like what Coach Hour wears every day. Biblically, Martha is from the Bible. She is sisters with a woman named Mary and a brother. She has a brother named Lazarus. Lazarus famously was brought back to life by Jesus Christ. But in the Gospel of Luke, in ironic Gospel of Luke, if we've read it all. Luke's come up. Jesus and his disciples stay at Martha and Mary and Lazarus' house. Mary sits at Jesus' feet and listens to his teachings, his preachings, while Martha prepares the meal and everything. And at one point, Martha says, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself?" And Jesus basically is like, "No, I don't care. I mean, Mary's here at my feet learning about the Word of God. That might be more important." So Marthas are just the homemakers in a sense. Our Marthas are Rita and Cora, and it seems like Rita judges Offred for what she deems as her choice to be a handmaid, but Cora presents that maybe it wasn't a choice. We get the first suggestion of what would you do? Would you go to the colonies? Um, the colonies are never really explained all that well. The colonies in the book seem to be some radioactive kind of place where the people you send people just to die. So going to the colonies is essentially a death sentence. And we find out later that as a handmaid, you have three tries, three different commanders, and if you cannot get pregnant after three, to the colonies you go. So I don't think you're ever going to be satisfied with what the colonies are per se, but there's that. Right around the page 11, I think I told you about it, the use of italics. We had the italics in my. She was refusing to call it my room. We have the italics. I'm just kind of looking down right here, and some old colloquial expressions that you're familiar with, like "I know what you mean" or "hear where you're coming from." And I think a lot of times the italics are explorations in language. There is one little section here that talks about how stillborn it was, or stabbed with her knitting needle right in the belly. Jealousy, it must have been eating her up, or here it was toilet cleaner she used. It sounds like the gossip is about a murder. And when they talk about jealousy, interesting, like who's jealous? Couldn't be the wives, could it? Of course, it probably is. But the idea that the world that they created is not ideal, that there's reason for jealousy, is something to pay attention to. The wordplay, though, is probably what we're going to look at. Our It's suggested that our Offred, our narrator, was educated. At one point, Serena said, "We've read your file. I know you're smart." And she talks a lot about words and language is power. That's going to be a big thing in this book. It's pretty in your face with fraternize, that means to behave like a brother. Hey, sororize is not a word. There's no word like behaving like a sister. Why is that? And I think if we had time and class and discussion, I would bring up that though our world right now is better than it's ever been, we can agree that we've most often lived in a sexist society. And what makes it so, or how do we change that? So my idea is that you need to have the words before you can get the change. What changes first? If we wanted to make our society more equal, would our language have to change first and then society would follow? Or would society change and then our language would follow? I think I'm in the minority when I would say I think language has to change first, because having a word for something makes it easier to be that something. Having a word that means to behave like sisters makes it easier for women to do so. It would be a fun discussion to kind of take a look at that, but I don't know if we have that opportunity right now. I mean, it's so obvious how language is important when you take a look at some basic things. Like, for example, they've taken away words. So when the handmaids go shopping, they cannot read. And also, they've changed the language, the basic expressions, like "blessed be the fruit," "praise be," "may the Lord open." Those are, they've changed the common, like "hello, how are you," to this very scripted, and they've changed the names of places. They have the all flesh. for what a butcher shop. So changing language is that's a thing, and how language and words control. So okay, cool. In that it says chapter 3, but I don't know how to talk about the chapters. We get to meet the commander's wife. First, we realize that this story is taking place 5 weeks into Offred's stay as Offred. She was probably of somebody else before him. She most definitely was. Um, the commander's wife. At one point, she kind of says, "Oh, I hoped this one would be different. My last one was drunk, and why was she a drunk? Probably because she was unhappy. She was drinking out of sadness." There's a chance that the commander's wife might be a little different because of the cigarette, like the fact that she has cigarettes. Cigarettes are contraband, like suggesting to break the rules or bend the rules. But I don't think that our commander's wife is going to be one. It seems like she recognizes her as like, oh, she was the one who used to be on TV, who used to sing, and she was more active in the creation of the world that we have. So we'll look at how happy is the commander's wife in this new world of Gilead. She gets really possessive. She talks about her husband, like, don't forget, he's my husband. You're just a rental. And it was really at the end of that, on page 16, the second to last paragraph, that most people look at and they go, oh, this could be. I showed you pictures of Tammy Faye Baker, who used to sing and be on television as a televangelist. Um, I was just looking up, I put it in Google, like, is Serena Joy Tammy Faye Baker? And yeah, they say it's a combination of Tammy Faye Baker and a woman named Phyllis Schlafly, Schlafly. And it's interesting that Phyllis, okay, Schlafly, probably Schlafly. I don't know who she is, but I looked it up, and she's credited with kind of stopping the Equal Rights Amendment from happening. She went on famously in one of her lines that the women livers don't understand that most women want to be a wife, a mother, a homemaker, and we're happy in that role. So let's pay attention to Serena and to see what extent she's happy with her role. Telephone. Okay. Um, we briefly meet a rather bold chauffeur, Nick, who gives her a little wink. Scandalous, I know. And she wonders, what makes him so bold. Like, he might be an eye, and we're introduced to a new group of people, eyes, and they're like secret underground police. They're like envision like a narc at school, like a police officer from 21 Jump Street who's hanging out and going like, "Hey, you want to go to the bathroom and do drugs?" You're like, "Whoa! If I know narcs exist, they might be trying to set me up." And you would say no, anyways. But so the fact that there are secret people out there policing makes it even scarier because you don't know who to trust. And I think this lack of trust is something that we're going to see in her interaction with Nick, definitely with her interaction with Of Glenn. Um, they're paired, they're doubled. She even says doubled because I think one needs to police or guard the other. Like, you know, Offred wonders if Of Glenn is pious or is as faithful or is a believer as she thinks that she is. They have an interaction with the Guardians of the Faith. It sounds like the Guardians of the Faith did not make the cut. They're not able to be angels. They're kind of like younger boys or older men, and they just do like mundane police type stuff. There is an interesting thing at the end of that fourth chapter where, as we walk away, I know they're watching these two men who aren't permitted to touch women. They touch with their eyes instead, and I move my hips a little, feeling the full red skirt sway around me. It's like thumbing your nose from behind a fence or teasing a dog with a bone held out of reach. I'm ashamed of myself for doing it because none of this is the fault of these men. They're too young. Then I find I'm not ashamed after all. I enjoy the power of a dog bone, passive but there. I hope they get hard at the sight of us and have to rub themselves against painted barriers surreptitiously. They'll suffer later that night in their regimented beds. And so on. There's no more magazines or films or substitutes, only me and my shadow walking away. Um, Takes her thing at these men kind of to tease them, kind of wondering what is her power? What power does she have left? She even wonders that when she was talking with Serena Joy, as in if an underground or a black market exists, like what do I have to trade? And it seems like all that Offred has is her sexuality, which is unfortunate. Um, we get our first mention of Luke. Luke seems to be her lover from back when America was America. Maybe it was a husband. We'll find out more as we move forward. We meet other people in this society, the Akana wives. They're dressed in multicolor, and um, what role do they play? Excuse me. Where are they in the hierarchy? I mean, if we have the hierarchy of Gilead, probably have the commanders and the commanders' wives at top. Unless we have the eyes above them, I don't know. It seems like the eyes could be more powerful. Where are the handmaids? Are they below the Marthas or above the Marthas? I think they're above the Akana wives, who seem to have to do everything all on their own. And then there's an anecdote about women were protected then on page 24. I find this to be an important passage. I remember the rules that were never spelled out, but every woman knew. Don't open your door to a stranger, even if he says he's the police, make him slide his ID under the door. Don't stop on the road to help motorists pretending to be in trouble. Keep the locks on and keep going. If anyone whistles, don't turn and look. Don't go to a laundromat by yourself at night. And I think these rules might kind of exist. As you go off, ladies, into college, I would definitely recommend like walking with somebody at night or not going to a laundromat on your own. What they've done though is they've over enforced these rules. Gilead is safe for women in the public arena, but it's unsafe in many other ways. One of the key lines at the end is there's more than one kind of freedom, said Aunt Lydia. Freedom to and freedom from. In the days of anarchy, it was freedom to. Now you're being given freedom from. Don't underrate it. And yeah, so instead of being free, you're free of these things that made society dangerous. It's an important passage. Going to the store, going to Milk and Honey or All Flesh, places like that. We get to see the shopping, and we meet a pregnant handmaid um, of Warren, and it's just like she's there just kind of showing off her pregnancy, and Offred knows her, remembers her from like Handmaid's training, and she's going to be Janine. Janine will be a name that we're going to meet, and we're going to know more about her. In fact, I even think she says she doesn't like Janine, or she didn't like Janine. Yeah, I never liked her. Top of page 27. Um, the end of that chapter, it's kind of weird. We have these Japanese tourists there, and I think that um, I was your age in the 80s, and it was funny that kind of like Japan was seen as the up and coming country. Not that it wasn't already established, but it was kind of like look at Japan for their work ethic and look at Japan and their buying power. I kind of feel like Japan um, was in this book. It's suggesting that maybe Japan has more power, where their tourists take trips to Gilead and ask our handmaids if they're happy. Obviously, she answered, but what else can I say? Okay, the walk. They choose the long way. I think it's probably basic that they probably choose the long way just because they're out of the house and it's good to be out of the house walking out. Um, One of the lines that I think is important, They would be on page 31 as they're walking and they pass a cemetery, and it says they haven't fiddled with the gravestones or the church either. It's only the more recent history that offends them. I'd like to dissect that more and try to figure out, but is it that the past we were more moral and that we should harken back to a time when we were great, and that's why we want to remember that, and it's the things that were more recent that made us go bad. Perhaps it could be more than that as well. The wall is, it's not most likely the wall that circles around Harvard University. It is. Our author has gone on and said that it takes place in Harvard for this particular reason. And there's bodies hanging from the wall for everyone to see, and I think this is understandable. This is in all, this is when you used to defeat your enemy, and then you would put their head on a stick and you would post it for everyone to see. Like, this is what we do to people who disobey. And the six bodies, they talk about white coats, so they're probably scientists and doctors. And I found it interesting that the McCarthyism, and if you don't know McCarthyism, Joseph McCarthy and the Red Scare, but the tactics used to get people to turn on one another. These are probably doctors who performed abortion, something that was legal in their time, but now they're being hanged as prisoners of war, like that we would hang, Nazis who were active at a concentration camp would be punished for war crimes. This seems like it's the same thing here. There's a reference to tulips, and kids always try to make more sense of the tulips than I think is necessary. I don't know. There's tulips red. I don't know if it's a symbol or not. Somewhere on some spark notes it must say it is. Um, and then as we get to the end on the bottom of 33, ordinary, says Aunt Lydia, is what you're used to. This may not seem ordinary to you now, but after a time it will. It'll become ordinary. And that's true. It may not be ordinary for Offred right now because she still remembers the past. But if she were to have a child, or if that child ended up having a child, this would be the state of the world. Of course, wealthy people have handmaids, and of course, Martha's wear green, and aunts who are older who police this exist. So it's not ordinary yet, but give it time, and it will be. And that's a little scary. So that's the first look into like a day of the life in Gilead, and I guess I'm just throwing it out there as, what do you think? Were you given enough? Are you able to envision or picture the world? What are some of the things that I didn't talk about that you would like to talk about? The setting, Offred's position in this society, the idea that we only see this society from Offred's point of view, as a handmaid. That and any other questions, I'd love if you posted. I know I told you guys to read to like page 147, I think, but I think I'm just going to put little videos out in installments, just kind of covering my observations in the book. I don't want them to be too long. This is getting to be too long right now. And then you're going to ask me questions like tests or grades or whatnot, or maybe you'll even have a question like, are we even going to take the IB test? And the answer is I don't know, but I think as a final assessment for the class, we should do something like what we've been training for. So if we don't take the actual IB test, we'll make up an IB test and take it for an assessment. So keep reading, do stuff just to be productive. Don't go outside. Don't interact with people. This sucks. Kind of wish I was at school. Anyways, now from our sponsor, Pepsi. The choice of a new gym. Okay, she out. Later.